They were the voices of a generation, the legends who once ruled the airwaves with twang, grit, and heartbreak. Most fans assume they're long gone, lost to the dust of country history. But what if we told you they're still here? While the world has changed beyond recognition, a few of country music's oldest icons are still breathing the same Southern air, still remembering the roar of the Grand Ole Opry, and still holding on to the very soul of a genre they helped shape. Today on the Country Rewind, we bring you a story that will stun even the most diehard fans. 12 oldest country musicians you didn't know are still alive. These aren't just survivors. These are living monuments, men and women who sang of pain, of love, of American pride, and who somehow, against all odds, are still among us. Some are quietly enjoying life in Tennessee cabins. Others are still writing, still singing, even still stepping onto stages. And if you think you know them all, think again. Number 1, Bill Anderson, the whisper that still echoes. Born November 1st, 1937, age 87, as of 2025. They called him Whispering Bill, not because he was soft-spoken, but because his voice carried a kind of gentle strength, like a breeze that moved the soul more than any storm ever could. Bill Anderson didn't just sing country music, he wrote it. In fact, many forget that behind the scenes of some of Nashville's biggest hits stood this quiet, Georgia-born wordsmith, crafting heartbreak and hope into lyrics that would define generations. By the early 1960s, Bill had already become a household name with hits like Still, Mama Sang a Song, and Po' Folks. His songs were simple, but the emotions behind them were monumental. They were about working-class lives, unspoken grief, and the quiet strength of faith and family. And they resonated deeply. But while many of his peers faded away with the changing tides of radio, Bill Anderson did something extraordinary. He adapted. He kept writing. His pen never ran dry. In the 1990s and even into the 2000s, Bill co-wrote chart toppers like Whiskey Lullaby for Brad Paisley and Alison Krauss, and Give It Away for George Strait, songs that younger fans might assume were written by fresh talent. They weren't. They were written by a man who never stopped understanding heartbreak. And now, at 87 years old, Bill Anderson is still working, still writing, still performing occasionally at the Grand Ole Opry, where he's been a member since 1961. He moves a little slower. His voice has weathered with time. But when he speaks into the microphone, it's not age you hear, it's wisdom. He's battled illness, lost loved ones, and outlived nearly every one of his contemporaries. But he's never lost the one thing that made him different, his whisper. To this day, fans who visit Nashville hope for a glimpse of Bill at the Opry stage, for a moment when history walks quietly into the spotlight and proves that some voices simply never fade. But Bill Anderson isn't the only one whose story continues to unfold quietly behind the curtain of fame. Next, we turn to a man who needs no introduction. Outlaw, legend, survivor. A man who's been defying time since the day he lit up a stage barefoot and unfiltered. Let's continue with the second legend on our list, the iconic Willie Nelson, told in heartfelt documentary-style fashion. Number 2, Willie Nelson, the outlaw who outlived the odds. Born April 29, 1933, age 92 as of 2025. If country music had a Mount Rushmore, Willie Nelson's face would be carved into the stone, weathered, smiling, and crowned by that unmistakable braided hair. He was always the rebel, the man who didn't quite fit the mold, who rewrote the rules of Nashville and then walked away from them entirely. He wasn't supposed to last. And yet here we are in 2025, and Willie Nelson is still standing. At 92 years old, he's become something of a living paradox, a hard-living outlaw who somehow cheated the clock, who smoked through his troubles and still found breath enough to sing. His life has been a storm, tax scandals, substance struggles, lost friends, and more than a few brushes with death. But somehow, Willie kept writing. From his early songwriting days with Crazy, yes, he wrote that classic for Patsy Cline, to his genre-defining outlaw albums like Red-Headed Stranger and the immortal On the Road Again, Willie Nelson has always done things his way. His voice, soft and frayed, never needed perfection. It just needed honesty. And that's what he gave. Brutal, beautiful, unapologetic truth in every note. And while others chose retirement or were forced into silence, Willie kept playing. His outlaw music festival tour continued well into his 90s. Even as his health slowed him down, he still showed up, with Trigger, his beat-up guitar, in hand. He recorded albums from his Texas home, appeared in documentaries, and even published books. For Willie, aging was never about stopping. It was about adjusting the pace, like shifting down a gear, but never hitting the brakes. And maybe that's his real legacy. Not the music, not the marijuana, not the myth, but the will to keep showing up, to keep writing, to keep loving the fans who never stopped loving him. As long as there's a guitar string left to pluck, Willie Nelson will find a way to sing. And in a world that moves too fast, he reminds us, slow doesn't mean finished. Sometimes it means forever. But Willie isn't the only one proving that age can't silence the heart of country. Because in the shadows of stardom, another outlaw waits, quiet, humble, and still writing his name into the pages of country history. Number 3, Bobby Bare, the reluctant legend who never left the road. Born April 7, 1935, age 90, as of 2025. He never chased fame. He didn't flash rhinestones or belt out ballads with drama. Bobby Bare was the working man's country star, low-key, grounded, and real. And yet, somehow, he outlived almost every one of his flashier peers. Now 90 years old, Bobby Bare remains one of the quiet giants of country music. A man whose name may not stir headlines, but whose voice has shaped the genre in ways fans barely recognize. It all started in the late 1950s when Bare accidentally launched his career with a song he wrote just to make ends meet, The All-American Boy. Ironically, it was credited to another artist due to label mix-ups. But Bobby didn't complain. He worked. And when he finally hit the airwaves under his own name in the 1960s, everything changed. With hits like Detroit City, 500 Miles Away from Home, and 4 Strong Winds, Bobby Bare gave country music something it didn't know it needed. Grit without the glamour. He brought the songwriter's soul to every line and became one of the early country artists to bring storytelling into the mainstream. He championed songwriters like Shel Silverstein, Tom T., Hall, and Chris Christopherson, recording their rawest and realest work. But Bobby Bare never chased the spotlight. He didn't need it. He stepped away when he wanted, came back when it felt right, and stayed loyal to the craft rather than the industry. Incredibly, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2013, long after many thought he had faded into history. But the truth is, he was never gone. He was just being Bobby, quiet, consistent, and always country. Even now at 90, he continues to make occasional appearances, write songs, and, most importantly, remain a revered presence in Nashville's inner circle. You won't see him trending, but among musicians, Bobby Bare is legend, a man who never broke and never needed to scream to be heard. But not all legends sang their truths with solemn voices. Some shattered expectations, broke the mold, and brought country twang to rock and roll. And one of them wears a crown. Number 4, Wanda Jackson, the queen who rocked country to its core. Born October 20th, 1937, age 87 as of 2025. Before Dolly wore rhinestones, before Tammy sang about standing by her man, Wanda Jackson was already kicking open doors and doing it in heels. They called her the Queen of Rockabilly, and for good reason. Wanda Jackson didn't just blend country and rock, she fused them with fire. In the 1950s, at a time when women in music were expected to be polite, soft-spoken, and pretty background vocals to the men in front, Wanda brought the growl. With her jet black hair, firecracker voice, and a red-hot electric guitar strapped over her shoulder, Wanda made it very clear. She was nobody's backup act. Discovered and mentored by country legend Hank Thompson, she quickly broke onto the scene with her hit Let's Have a Party. But that was just the start. She toured with Elvis Presley, yes, that Elvis, and even briefly dated him. He encouraged her to embrace rock and roll, and Wanda ran with it, becoming one of the first women to record loud, fast, rebellious rockabilly tracks like Fujiyama Mama and Mean, Mean Man. But Wanda never abandoned her country roots. Her voice may have been rebellious, but her soul was still wrapped in the western twang of Oklahoma. In the 1960s and 70s, she transitioned into gospel and traditional country with grace, showcasing a depth and versatility that few artists could rival. As time passed, the spotlight moved on, but Wanda never stopped. Even when the world stopped looking, she kept recording, touring, and preaching through her music. And then, in the 2000s, decades after many had written her off, she made a roaring comeback. Thanks to collaborations with younger fans like Jack White of the White Stripes, Wanda released The Party Ain't Over in 2011 to critical acclaim. And she wasn't done yet. In 2009, she was rightfully inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame under the Early Influence category, finally getting credit for the revolution she helped ignite. Now 87, Wanda has officially retired from performing, but her legacy is louder than ever. She lives quietly in Oklahoma, still receiving tributes and awards from both country and rock communities. Every young woman who steps on a stage with a mic and a message owes something to Wanda. Because before it was safe to be loud, she was loud. Before it was normal to break the rules, she broke them. And in a world that tried to silence her, Wanda Jackson plugged in the amp and turned the volume all the way up. From a rockabilly queen to a woman whose voice graced every Saturday night at the Grand Ole Opry. Next, we meet a lady whose strength, sass, and sparkle continue to shine, even at 85. Number 5. Jeannie Seely, the sparkle that never fades. Born July 6, 1940, age 85 as of 2025. She was nicknamed Miss Country Soul, and not just for her honey-smooth vocals. Jeannie Seely brought something to country music that was rare in the 1960s. Sass, heartache, humor, and sparkle, all wrapped into one unstoppable woman. Born in a small town in northwestern Pennsylvania, Jeannie had dreams bigger than the local hayfields. She moved to Nashville in the early 1960s, where she began penning songs for legends like Dottie West and Ernest Tubb. But she wasn't content being just a songwriter. She needed the microphone. And then came her breakout hit in 1966, Don't Touch Me. It wasn't just a hit, it was a firestorm. The song climbed the charts and earned Jeannie her first and only Grammy Award, making her one of the first women in country music to win such recognition. But Jeannie didn't stop there. She joined the Grand Ole Opry in 1967 and quickly became a fixture on its stage. Her voice, a silky mix of pain and elegance, made her a fan favorite, and so did her fashion. She was one of the first women to wear miniskirts on the Opry stage, scandalous at the time, but also groundbreaking. Jeannie challenged the conservative image of female country artists, balancing grace with defiance, and constantly pushing boundaries with both her music and her image. Through the 1970s and 80s, she released dozens of albums and toured tirelessly. But it wasn't all glitter. Jeannie faced incredible personal hardship, including the death of her husband and musical partner, Hank Cochran, as well as several health scares. But like the true performer she is, she kept going. And not just going, thriving. In recent years, she's collaborated with younger artists, hosted her own radio show, and continued to perform on the Opry stage with the same energy that made her a star more than 5 decades ago. In 2020, Jeannie released a full-length album titled An American Classic, featuring duets with Willie Nelson, Lori Morgan, Ray Stevens, and more. At 80, her voice hadn't dimmed, it had only deepened like a well-aged bourbon with a sharper bite. Today at 85, Jeannie Seely still performs live, still records music, and still flashes that dazzling smile that lights up every stage she walks on. She once said, "Age is just a number. The stage is my home." And you believe it, because when Jeannie sings, time stands still. Now we turn to a voice that's even older than the Grand Ole Opry itself. He's the harmonica master who played behind legends across genres and across generations. And yes, he's still blowing those bluesy notes with fire. Number 6, Charlie McCoy, the harmonica that shaped Nashville. Born March 28, 1941, age 84 as of 2025. You may not recognize his face. You might not even know his name. But if you've listened to country music over the past 60 years, you've heard Charlie McCoy. His harmonica is everywhere, woven into the DNA of Nashville. From behind the curtain of stardom, Charlie shaped the sound of modern country, pop, and even rock. And now, at 84 years old, he's still doing it. Born in West Virginia and raised in Florida, McCoy was a musical prodigy. By his early 20s, he had become the go-to session musician for everyone from Elvis Presley to Bob Dylan. His harmonica work on Dylan's Blonde on Blonde album alone cemented him as one of the most versatile and intuitive players in music history. But Nashville was where Charlie found his home and where he became a quiet giant. He was the house musician at countless sessions during country's golden years. Whether it was Tammy Wynette's Stand By Your Man, Loretta Lynn's Coal Miner's Daughter, or George Jones's He Stopped Loving Her Today, chances are Charlie's harmonica was there, crying, sighing, breathing life into the songs. And yet, despite this invisible legacy, McCoy was never content to stay in the shadows. In the 1970s, he stepped out front as a solo artist and TV personality. He became the musical director of the long-running television variety show Hee Haw, where his on-screen charm and musical genius earned him a whole new audience. Charlie played everything: harmonica, guitar, bass, keyboards, even vibes, and he played them all with precision and soul. He wasn't just a utility musician, he was a master of tone and mood. Over the years, Charlie released more than 24 solo albums, blending country, gospel, jazz, and even classical. And in 2009, the industry finally gave him the recognition he deserved: induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Fast forward to 2025, and Charlie McCoy still hasn't hung it up. He continues to perform, give interviews, and even tour internationally, especially in Europe and Japan, where his name carries a cult following. His harmonica playing, though slower, still breathes with the same warmth and wisdom it always had. Charlie once said, "I just want to play something that touches people." And he has, for over 6 decades, quietly, faithfully, brilliantly. Next, we meet a woman who stood her ground alongside country royalty: Porter Wagoner, Dolly Parton, and the rest. She's a voice from the past that still echoes today, quietly living out her years in Tennessee. Number 7, Norma Jean, the forgotten first lady of the Porter Wagoner Show. Born January 30th, 1938, age 87 as of 2025. Before Dolly Parton stepped into the spotlight, before the rhinestone duets and tabloid headlines, there was Norma Jean, a soft-spoken Oklahoma girl with a powerhouse voice and a poise that lit up every stage she walked onto. In the 1960s, Norma Jean wasn't just a singer. She was the female face of country television. As the original girl singer on the Porter Wagoner Show, Norma Jean became a weekly guest in millions of American homes. Dressed in modest gowns and with a voice full of heartache and conviction, she charmed viewers from coast to coast. But behind the poise was a woman with steel in her spine and stories behind her eyes. Born in Wellston, Oklahoma, Norma Jean Beasler grew up on country radio. She began performing in her teens and quickly attracted attention for her crystal-clear vocals. After a stint on Red Foley's Ozark Jubilee, she caught the attention of none other than Porter Wagoner himself, who invited her to join his new syndicated TV show in 1961. From that moment, Norma Jean became a household name. Her hits like Go Cat Go, I Wouldn't Buy a Used Car from Him, and Heaven Help the Working Girl weren't just clever titles. They were bold declarations in a male-dominated industry. Norma Jean brought a woman's perspective to country music in a time when few others dared. But her story took a dramatic turn. By 1967, she left the Porter Wagoner Show, and shortly after, Dolly Parton took her place. History and the spotlight shifted. Norma Jean's name faded from headlines as Dolly's star rose. Many fans today don't realize that before Dolly, it was Norma who held the spotlight, and held it well. Still, Norma never chased fame for fame's sake. She kept recording, touring, and even returned to gospel music, reconnecting with her faith. She faced personal struggles, including battles with addiction and emotional trauma. But through it all, she never stopped singing. In recent years, she's largely stayed out of the public eye, living quietly in Oklahoma and occasionally appearing at small venues or tribute shows. But among country purists and historians, Norma Jean remains an icon, a bridge between traditional Nashville and the new era of female empowerment in country music. Without Norma Jean, there may never have been room for Dolly or any of the others that followed. At 87, she lives out her days in peace, her legacy secure, her voice still echoing through dusty records and black and white TV reruns. She may have been overshadowed, but she was never forgotten. Now let's meet a legend so timeless, her smile alone could light up a stadium. She built an empire, gave away millions, and somehow she's still not done. You already know her name, but you may not realize just how alive and active she still is. Number 8, Dolly Parton, the eternal queen of country music. Born January 19th, 1946, age 79 as of 2025. She's not just a country music legend. She's not just a household name. Dolly Parton is a universe unto herself, a whirlwind of rhinestones, wisdom, wit, and a heart big enough to shelter 1,000 lifetimes. And yes, she's still here, still shining, still working harder than most artists half her age. Born in a one-room cabin in Sevier County, Tennessee, Dolly Rebecca Parton came into the world with little more than hope and a voice. But even from her earliest days, that voice carried more than just melody. It carried magic. From humble beginnings in the Smoky Mountains to her Grand Ole Opry debut at age 13, Dolly carved her way into the country world with relentless ambition. When she joined the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, the world was introduced to her golden hair, golden voice, and golden heart. But what many didn't see was her grit. She wrote her own songs, hundreds of them. She fought for her publishing rights. And when she left Wagoner's show to go solo, she wrote I Will Always Love You, a bittersweet farewell that became one of the greatest ballads of all time. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Dolly Parton ruled country radio. Hits like Jolene, 9 to 5, and Coat of Many Colors became instant classics. But Dolly didn't stop at music. She conquered film, television, business, and philanthropy. She launched Dollywood, one of the most successful theme parks in the U.S., and founded the Imagination Library, a nonprofit that has given away over 200 million books to children around the world. But here's the part that astonishes everyone. She's still doing all of it. In 2022, she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And true to form, she didn't just accept the honor. She recorded an entire rock album. Collaborating with icons like Paul McCartney and Stevie Nicks, Dolly proved she wasn't finished, not even close. In her late 70s, Dolly continues to release new music, run her companies, fund hospitals and disaster relief efforts, and appear in movies, interviews, and public events. She wakes up early, she works long days, and she still writes by hand with pencil and paper. Despite her fame, Dolly has never lost the humility of the girl from the mountains. She still refers to herself as just a backwoods Barbie. But the world knows better. She's a national treasure. As of 2025, Dolly Parton is 79 years old and still planning, still creating, still reminding us that kindness, faith, and hard work never go out of style. She once said, "I never age in my heart. I just keep going." And we believe her. Now we turn our attention to another country queen, less flashy, less famous perhaps, but no less fierce. She broke into Nashville with boldness and built a legacy on her own terms. Number 9, Margo Smith, the Tennessee yodeler who took her time. Born April 9th, 1942, age 83 as of 2025. She was never the loudest voice in the room, but when Margo Smith opened her mouth to sing, especially one of her signature yodels, time seemed to freeze. And in the 1970s, when disco flirted with Nashville and rhinestones were everywhere, Margo brought class, clarity, and control. Now at 83, she lives a quiet life in Tennessee, far from the flashing lights and cameras, but her place in country music history is quietly secure. Margo's journey wasn't typical. She didn't arrive on the scene as a teenage phenom. In fact, she began her music career as a kindergarten teacher in Ohio. But her voice, sweet, powerful, and unmistakably country, couldn't stay hidden for long. In 1975, she signed her first record deal and quickly made waves with her unique blend of traditional country and elegant phrasing. Her breakthrough hit, "There I Said It," put her on the map, but it was "Don't Break the Heart That Loves You" and "Take My Breath Away" that cemented her place in country music's golden halls. At her peak, Margo was known as the Tennessee yodeler, a rare skill among mainstream female artists. She would throw in the yodel not as a gimmick, but as a technique, perfectly placed to break hearts and raise chills. But Margo wasn't interested in playing the industry game. As trends shifted in the early 80s, she quietly stepped back from the spotlight, choosing to pursue her own path, writing gospel music, teaching vocal students, and even performing with her daughter in a Christian country duo. She may not have become a crossover star like Dolly or Reba, but that was never the goal. Margo Smith was always about purity, pure sound, pure intention, pure heart. She survived the rough turns of the music industry, stayed out of scandal, and continues to be respected among Nashville insiders as a technician and a class act. Today, Margo lives in relative seclusion, appearing only at select tribute events and gospel showcases. She no longer chases applause, but if you heard her sing today, you'd still clap, maybe even cry. Some legends burn bright. Others glow steadily for decades. Margo Smith was the latter, and her glow is still there, even if you have to look a little harder to see it. Now we head further back, to a woman whose voice once lit up the Louisiana hayride, who sang alongside George Jones and Johnny Cash, and who, despite history nearly forgetting her, is still here. Number 10. Margie Singleton, the voice the charts forgot but history never should born. October 5th, 1935, age 89, as of 2025. If there's a hall of unsung heroes in country music, Margie Singleton deserves her own wing. She never got the flashy headlines. She rarely topped the charts. But Margie wrote the songs, sang the duets, and helped carve the road that many stars later walked. Now, at 89 years old, she remains one of country's most quietly influential voices, a true pioneer hiding in plain sight. Born in Coushatta, Louisiana, Margie was raised in a gospel-singing family. By her teens, she was already writing music and had married country singer Leon Ashley. Together, they would form a musical partnership that spanned decades. But Margie didn't wait around for anyone to hand her success. She chased it. In the early 1960s, she signed to Mercury Records and began releasing her own solo work. Her early hits like Old Records and Eyes of Love drew praise from critics, but it was her duet work that brought her national attention. She recorded with George Jones, long before his legendary pairing with Tammy Wynette. She also performed duets with Farron Young, Leon Ashley, and even the Man in Black himself, Johnny Cash. But Margie wasn't just a singer. She was a songwriter, and a prolific one. She penned hits for Brooke Benton, Tammy Wynette, and David Houston. One of her best-known compositions, Lie to Me, became a standard covered by several major artists. She helped define the Nashville sound with her writing, even as others took the credit. And still, mainstream fame largely passed her by. Margie continued recording into the 70s and 80s. Though her output slowed, she later moved into Christian music, reflecting her deep Southern faith. But she never truly left music behind. In recent years, something remarkable happened, a rediscovery. Younger generations of country fans began digging into vinyl, into the forgotten corners of country's golden age, and there they found Margie. Her early duets were reissued. She appeared in interviews, documentaries, and tribute events, and once again, people listened. In 2021, at the age of 86, she released Heaven or Hell, her first solo single in decades. Her voice, weathered but beautiful. The message, as powerful as ever. As of 2025, Margie Singleton still lives in Tennessee, occasionally writing and attending gospel music events. She may walk with slower steps, but she carries the quiet pride of a woman who did the work without ever needing the spotlight. She once said, "I've never needed fame. I just wanted people to feel what I wrote," and they did. Next up, a man whose smooth baritone gave us one of the biggest country hits of the early 1960s. A former auctioneer turned global star, and yes, he's still alive. Number 11, Leroy Van Dyke, the auctioneer who became a country king. Born October 4th, 1929, age 95, as of 2025. Few artists in country history have had a debut like Leroy Van Dyke, and even fewer can say they're still alive and well at 95 years old. His rise wasn't ordinary, and neither is his legacy. Born in Missouri during the Great Depression, Leroy grew up surrounded by the sounds of classic country and the cadence of local livestock auctions. He served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, but when he returned, music was calling. And in 1956, that call turned into a roar when he released The Auctioneer. Written about his cousin Ray Sims, a real auctioneer, the song featured lightning-fast lyrics and tongue-twisting rhythm that stunned audiences. It was part comedy, part brilliance, and it became a smash hit, selling millions of copies and catapulting Van Dyke into stardom. But that was just the beginning. In 1961, Leroy released Walk On By, which would become one of the longest-running hits in country music history. The song spent 19 weeks at number 1 on Billboard's country chart, a record that held for over 50 years. Smooth, haunting, and impeccably produced, it helped define the Nashville sound of the early 60s. Van Dyke had tapped into something timeless, heartbreak delivered with control, grace, and melody. But unlike many stars of the era, Leroy didn't crash. He didn't spiral. He didn't fade. Instead, he built a steady career that spanned decades, touring, recording, and running his own entertainment business with his wife Gladys. Even into the 2000s and 2010s, Leroy was a frequent headliner at state fairs, rodeos, and classic country festivals. He never tried to rebrand himself, never chased new trends. He stayed Leroy Van Dyke, and fans loved him for it. Now in 2025, Leroy lives a quieter life, spending time with family and occasionally appearing at select country events. But his presence still lingers. His songs continue to be played on classic country radio. His records still sell to collectors, and younger musicians still marvel at the speed, technique, and precision of the auctioneer. When asked how he kept going for so long, Leroy once replied, "I'm just doing what I love. It never felt like work." And perhaps that's the secret to his longevity. Because when a man sings from a place of joy, it echoes far beyond the stage. And now, we reach the final name on our list, a woman whose voice once captivated late-night radio waves and whose strength through the years has kept her legacy quietly burning. Number 12, Judy Collins, the silver-throated songbird who never stopped soaring. Born May 1st, 1939, age 86 as of 2025. To call Judy Collins a country artist would be too narrow. To call her a folk icon, a pop balladeer, or a Broadway interpreter, also too small. The truth is, Judy Collins is all of these things and more. And at 86 years old, she is still singing, touring, and recording, defying every expectation about age, artistry, and endurance. With her long silver hair and crystalline soprano, Judy's voice has been part of America's cultural fabric for over 6 decades. She rose to fame in the 1960s as part of the folk revival movement, sharing stages with Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, and Joan Baez. But what made Judy different wasn't just her voice, it was her vision. She introduced mainstream audiences to songwriters like Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, and Randy Newman, long before they were legends. Her haunting 1967 version of Suzanne helped bring Cohen's poetry to the masses, while her stunning rendition of Both Sides Now turned a young Joni Mitchell's song into an international standard. But Judy's story didn't stop with folk music. She ventured into country, gospel, and show tunes, earning Grammy nominations across genres and generations. She brought country elements into albums like True Stories and Other Dreams and Fires of Eden, blending Nashville twang with lyrical introspection in ways few could pull off. Yet behind the elegance was a woman fighting her own demons. Judy battled alcoholism, depression, and the heartbreaking loss of her only son to suicide. And yet, through each chapter of tragedy, she turned pain into performance, healing not only herself, but millions who found refuge in her voice. Remarkably, Judy never stopped. While others retired or settled into nostalgia, she pushed forward, touring globally, recording new material, and even publishing books and poetry collections. In 2022, she released an album of all original songs titled Spellbound, her first such album in her entire career. At age 82, it was hailed by critics as timeless and achingly beautiful. And in 2025, Judy Collins continues to tour, singing to packed concert halls, universities, and intimate theaters, often accompanied only by her piano or guitar. What keeps her going? She once said, "As long as my voice is strong and my heart is full, I will sing." And she has, and she does. So, there you have it. 12 oldest living country musicians you didn't know were still alive. Not just surviving, but in many cases, still thriving. These artists walked through decades of change, through war, heartbreak, shifting genres, and the loss of their peers. They sang their truths, told our stories, and became the soundtrack of entire lifetimes. And now they serve as living memory, bridges between past and present, reminding us that country music isn't just about youth or fame or radio hits. It's about truth. And truth, when sung from the soul, never dies. So the next time you hear an old record crackle on the radio or catch the whisper of a forgotten lyric, remember, some of the voices who gave us those moments are still with us. And for that, we owe them more than applause. We owe them gratitude. If this video moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Country Rewind. Tell us in the comments, which living legend surprised you most? And which story would you like us to tell next? Until then, keep your heart tuned to the past, because the past, it's still singing.